Hi everyone!
Hey guys, hope you're all doing well. Hope you're staying healthy, and most importantly, that you're starting to feel a little bit of that holiday cheer.
So normally we would invite you to come to Hale Kokua o Manoa for some holiday food and fun. But this year, since everything's a little bit different, we thought we'd put a quick recipe together for you. And you can make this at home and share with your family, friends, and of course, most importantly, your
Neighbors, that's right. Don't forget about your neighbors. One of the things that really helps me to get into the holiday spirit is the smell of cinnamon. So today we're going to be making a cinnamon swirl bread, and of course we'll tweak it along the way so that we could have it plant-based. So we'll show you guys how to do that, and we're looking forward to seeing how it comes out so we can share it with our neighbors. All right, let's get baking.
To get started, there's just a few items that you need for this recipe.
So the ingredient list for this bread is pretty small. Most of the things you'll already have inside of your pantry or your cupboards. There's a couple things that you might, but those are easy to find as well. So to get started, we have active dry yeast. We're also going to be using any kind of non-dairy milk. So you can use soy milk, you can use almond milk, you can use any kind of milk. In our case, we're using oat milk. The next thing that we're going to be using is agave. We're using agave as a replacement for sugar, so we're not going to be using regular sugar. The next thing that we're going to be using is a flax egg. Flax egg is obviously to replace egg. And instead of using eggs, we're going to be using flax meal added to water, and that's going to create your binding agent. The next thing that we're going to be using is coconut oil, and that's going to be in place of your butter. The last few things that we have is regular salt, and we have flour. For our glaze, for our swirl that we're gonna have inside the bread, we're gonna just be using cinnamon and a little bit more of that agave. And that's pretty much all you're gonna be needing. Okay, so the first part of creating this bread is to make the dough. And there's a couple ways you can do it. Some people like to knead everything by hand, or you could knead it with a machine. And so we're gonna do it with the machine here because I'm lazy and we got other things to do. Can't just be standing there all day kneading the dough. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna add all the ingredients, and the first thing we're gonna do is the yeast. And don't worry about the measurements, we'll have everything written down so that you can reference back later. So the first thing again is active dry yeast, and we're gonna add that as well. The next thing that we're gonna be adding is the milk. And so, as I told you before, we're using non-dairy milk. And so this case, it's oatmeal milk, but again, you can use any type of milk. And so what I've also added in here was the water. So again, less dishes to wash. So this is about a cup of the milk and about a third of a cup of water. So we'll add that in there as well. The next thing we're gonna add is our agave. So agave, total agave that it asks for is about, I think it's about a cup. And so you just put half of it in for the dough. The rest of it you're gonna be using for the swirl part with the cinnamon. So this is about half a cup or so. So I'm gonna add that in here. I like to scrape the rest of it because I'm not just lazy, I'm also Chinese, so I don't like to waste. Okay. The next thing you're gonna be putting is the egg. So remember we talked a little bit about the flax egg. So flax egg is super simple. All you do is you add 1 tablespoon of flax meal to 3 tablespoons of water, and that will create 1 flax egg. So in this case, we're creating 2 flax eggs, so you just multiply it by 2. And so what you do is you put the flax in there, you put the water, you mix it around, and you just let it kind of become a little bit gel-like. Usually it's like a few minutes, you can just let it sit, and then it becomes an egg, and then that's your binder. So you add that as well. And the next thing after that is you go ahead and add your coconut oil. So I'm just gonna put a little, and you don't need a ton. So it's a pretty low-fat bread, but there's your coconut oil. And the last thing that you go ahead and put in is your dry ingredients. So this is the flour. We add, about 5-6 cups or so. You just add until you feel as though the mix as you're kneading is nice and good consistency. It doesn't have, not too wet, not too dry. So I just go ahead and add all that inside. And the next thing we add is the salt. It's only about a teaspoon and a half of salt, not too much. But you go ahead and add that in there. And that's pretty much everything. So let me get this hooked up to our handy mixer. And usually when you knead it with the mixer, it's probably like about 10 minutes or so. It doesn't have to be a super long time, about 10 minutes, sometimes even a little less. But I just put it on a low mix. Again, start low. If you crank it all the way high, then your flour is gonna fly all over the place. So start low, and you can increase it to a little bit higher if you want to. But I usually just do it like pretty low kneading. And you just let this set for about 10 minutes, and we'll be back. 10 minutes, I'm gonna go do some things. Okay, so 10 minutes of kneading. After it forms into a ball, I just place it inside of a bowl and cover it with a towel. You can have a little moist towel if you want to, and just let it rise for about 2 hours. So it's a little bit of waiting. Again, gives you time to do other things. But about 2 hours, go ahead and let it rise. It's gonna double in size, and then you're ready to start rolling it out. Okay, we're back. All right, it's been about 2 hours. We've had time to wash the floors, clean the kitchen, do the yard. Dog's clean now, and now we're ready to make the bread. So at about 2 hour mark, you'll notice that the dough is pretty much doubled in size. And so this is kind of what it's gonna look like. Once it's doubled in size, that's when you're ready to start rolling it out for the cinnamon swirl. And so at this stage, what we're gonna do, we're just gonna take it right out of this bowl. And it's okay if it's a little bit wet on the bottom. It's not a big deal. So we're gonna open it up just like this, pull it out of here. And what I like to do, so you can make it into 2 breads, but I like to make it into 3. That way you can share it with more people. So what you do, and it doesn't have to be exact, but you go ahead and just make it into thirds. There you go. There's about 1, 2, and 3. And so now that you have 3 balls, you can kind of ball them up a little bit. If you're really anal about it, you can measure each one so that no one gets more than the other person, but you don't really have to measure. As long as they're kind of around the same, it's good. All right, so once we have this, then we're ready to start rolling them out and putting the cinnamon on. Okay, so now that you have your dough balled up, you can take one of your balls and get ready to roll it out. And so I'll show you guys how to do. The first thing you want to do is you want to flour the surface. And so I just take a little bit of AP flour, all-purpose flour, and I just sprinkle it around the surface where I know that the dough is going to be, because sometimes it'll be a little sticky. So I just kind of flour that area, and then take the dough, and you want your dough to actually be kind of cylindrical, so kind of a long strip. And so for me to do that, I like to kind of push the ball up so it kind of looks like a little bit more narrow. And so that helps it to roll out a little bit more strip-like. And so what I do, you just use your handy rolling pin, and then you basically just roll it out. And so it just takes a couple of strokes. Sometimes if the dough's a little drier, then it'll take a little bit more. If it's wetter, it'll roll out a little bit easier. And along the way, if you ever notice that your dough is sticking to your counter or to your rolling pin like that, just take a little bit of flour and sprinkle it on there. And that'll help for it to roll a little bit more smoother without sticking too much. And so let's just roll this guy out, see if we can get it nice and narrow. Usually it takes a little bit of practice the first couple of times you do it, but by the time you finish making this for your entire street, you'll be really good. So just plan on giving it out to a lot of people, and you'll be really good by the time you finish. Okay, so what I like to do is once I roll it out, one side, I do flip it a little bit, just so that, because there's going to be a little rebound. So it's going to kind of shrink back, and then I roll it out again one more time. Pull it back. There you go. Some people ask, how long is this? I'm not really sure, but I think if you kind of would say about a foot and a half, maybe like
No.
18 inches or so, then that's probably sufficient for your dough. So this is pretty much what it's going to look like. That's one rolled out. And then, so the next thing is doing your swirl. And so the way that you do the swirl, again, it's just agave. So we used that excess agave that we had, and I just added cinnamon. So it's about half of a cup of agave and about 2 to 3 tablespoons. It just depends how cinnamony you want it. And you can be creative too if you want to add like nutmeg or something like that. But this is just cinnamon. So what I do is I just go ahead and add a little bit cinnamon here. And we're just spreading it out like this. And if some people really like the glaze or the swirl, so you can be super generous if you want to. But if it's too sweet or you don't really care if you have a ton, just make a thin layer. It's actually going to be more than you think, because as you roll it up, it's going to build and build and build, and so it'll be a lot more than you think it is. So just get a nice thin layer here, like this. And just make sure everywhere is like pretty evenly coated. If you don't have to go all the way to the edges on the sides here, because a lot of the times as you bake it, it'll get a little bit more drippy. So sometimes it'll drip out the pan. So you don't have to go all the way to the edge of it. So this is pretty good. Oh, and another thing I noticed too is that if you're spreading and you notice, man, it's too runny, then what you can do is you can put the agave in the refrigerator or the freezer, and so it's going to be a little bit more viscous, and that'll kind of help you control it a little bit more. But this one wasn't too bad, so I didn't have to put it in the refrigerator. All right, so that's pretty much it. Okay, so this is how you do the swirl. So if you've ever had like swirl bread and you've wondered how they do it, it's pretty simple. So it's like this, and then you just roll it up. So kind of roll it like you're rolling up a sleeping bag. So you're just pulling in the corners and rolling it, and you do it, it doesn't have to be super tight, but do it as tight as you can. If you do it super loose, then it's just going to look like floppy and you won't have as many swirls. So the more tight you do it, the more swirls you'll have, and then also the more cinnamony it'll taste, because all of the layers will be more close together. So that's pretty much it. So that's how you roll it, and it's going to look very much like that. All right, so once we finish rolling it, we put it, I'm back. We're going to put it inside of our baking pan. And so this is a nice trick that I learned, is that if you don't want things to stick, a lot of times people will oil it up or they'll put butter. But another way you can do it is just use parchment paper, and you don't even have to use the whole, cover the whole pan. Just put enough for the bottom of the pan. So I just cut little strips of it, and then you can place your bread right on top like that. So it's going to look just like that. Once you have it all rolled up and you have it inside of the pan, you're actually going to want to let it rise for another hour. So you can do more cleaning, do more errands, and in about an hour, you'll have a nice risen bread. In the meantime, go ahead and heat the oven, preheat it to 350, and by the time it's risen, you'll be ready to bake it. Okay, we're back. The hour went by really quick, but the bread is now risen. So this is kind of what it's going to look like. So after you uncover it, you've noticed that it's basically doubled in size. This has actually been a little bit less than an hour. So if you wanted to get a little bit more puffy and a little bit larger, just rise it a little longer. So the more you wait, the bigger it'll get. So once it's around this size, though, you're ready to bake. And so come, all we're going to do is we're going to put it right inside the oven, let it bake for about 30 minutes or so, and it should be good to go. Remember, safety first. Okay. Okay, let's see what it looks like. Is it swirly? Oh, not bad.
All right, that's a wrap. Thank you for joining us on our baking adventure of cinnamon swirl bread. Thanks, Bren, for making it for us today.
Anytime. I hope that you guys had fun, and I hope that you make it, I hope that you bake it, and most importantly, I hope that you share it with your neighbors and those around you.
Merry Christmas! Whoa, thank you! Wow, did you guys make it? Yeah.
To stay connected, make sure you visit us at our website. And until then, Mele Kalikimaka.
Mele
We'll see you guys
Kalikimaka.
soon.